Assalamu alaikum.
Can't hear.
Which I will name shortly. But first, there is Abdurraheem Green.
And that is Dr. Abdul Haqq Baker. And this is
A piece of cake.
piece of cake.
Abdurraheem looking very cool and menacing, actually. With
yeah, getting ready for the summer, bro. In it,
mashallah, mashallah.
Optimistic.
I would say that you're just trying to join us black brothers, but we flex differently when we shave our heads.
Is it? I don't know, bro. I have no idea. I have no.
Looks good, though.
Since I've shaved my head, I've been behaving really weird.
In what way?
I don't know. I've got super energetic. It's like the opposite of Samson. Samson and Delilah. You know,
I do. I remember the story. Yeah,
you remember the story. So it's like the opposite. It's like I've shaved my head and I've sort of got super like energetic and bouncy. And my kids are saying, "What's happened to you since you shaved your head? You've been like." We were doing some martial arts class, and I was just like flipping. I don't know what I was in, some sort of Bruce Lee zone or something, like this.
So you know how we feel. You know how we feel about shaving heads.
Yeah, definitely.
Mashallah. No,
I just hope it doesn't materialize into some Khawarij tendencies, bro.
I don't worry. I'll be there to hold your hand and make sure that doesn't
here
happen.
to give me a slap. Abdurraheem, poof. Get back in line, bro.
Inshallah. No, that won't happen. I doubt that very much. But wa alaikum salam and good evening to all of you who are greeting us. Welcome to the show. Good to have you back, and those who are joining us for the first time. And today, what we're going to be looking at is a very interesting thing to discuss, I think. When calling a spade fuels prejudice during tragedy, and we find that so many stereotypes come up when a tragedy has happened. And I want to speak about some serious incidents with Abdurraheem and yourselves as the audience, looking at the really untimely and tragic death in Walthamstow last week, very recently, of Hussein Chowdhury, who we ask Allah to give him the death of a shahid, shaheed, because he died protecting and defending his mother and his brother when two individuals tried to attempted and succeeded actually in robbing their family business, which was at the home, some designer jackets, and in the process nearly severed the mother's hand as well. The mother and the other brother had to go to hospital for severe injuries. But Hussein Chowdhury succumbed to his injuries and died. Today we saw on the news, it was headline news as well, that somebody has been arrested. So first and foremost, we say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un to this young man who had everything going for him. And we ask and pray that Allah grants him Jannatan Firdaus. Ameen. And that's one circumstance. And I'm going to come to this. It's a sensitive topic, but I've had individuals contact me to discuss this as well. The other incident is the shooting spree in America, where we saw, they call them Asians, more Oriental. We learned that they're from South Korea. These women that were in these parlors being shot, 3 women being shot and killed by this white culprit in this instance. And basically, when we look at the headlines again, when a white individual, Abdurraheem, does the shooting and the killing, they're very slow to call it a hate crime. They're very slow to call it terrorism or anything like that.
Some officer was saying, oh, he had a bad day.
That's right. Captain James Baker or something. Yeah, I read that. He had a bad day. Yeah, well, different colours, so he's more closer to you than he is to me. Forget the name.
Slave owner, bro.
Yeah, possibly.
Anyway.
But yeah, so my thing is, at the end of the day, we see this contrast. We see that prejudice is fueled during these tragic moments. And how does that connect? Why am I saying this in connection with Hussein Chowdhury, rahimahullah? It's because when we look at the description that was put on the road at the, straight after from amongst the community, and this has happened a few times, I'm going to read Abdurraheem what was circulated, because I was speaking to a group of brothers and this came to me as well. So just spoke to the family of the deceased, Basically, the Shaheed sells designer jackets. Some black boy had contacted him to buy them. They came to his house, and then a few black guys pulled out knives and demanded the stock. Then they continue. The fight spilled out into the street. Mother tried to stop the black guys from stabbing son. And all of that's correct in the sense that the mother tried to defend the son and everything and stop the guy stabbing. But that referencing to black, you see it not only amongst our communities, you see it amongst wider communities. You don't hear that when it's a white individual, either amongst Muslims or in the wider society. But when it's of my description, my complexion, you hear the color being described. Okay, so what it's doing is it's pointing to an inherent prejudice in these times of tragedy, and I think that that's problematic from all sides of the spectrum, whether we're looking at it societally, whether we're looking at it as communities, and we don't want it to detract from the tragedy. Two tragedies I've mentioned here, two fatal events that I've mentioned here, but always underlying and coming to the fore is this prejudice, this bias, cognitive or unknown, unconscious bias in that instance, but it's still there. Okay, and you'll see that what that does is it muddies the waters, it makes it murkier, detracting from the actual tragedy or event itself. And it's something we need to address because it fuels prejudices. And I hasten to add, when I got the news of the incident in the group that I was in, and there was some pictures circulating of the suspected culprits. And what did I do? The first thing I did, said, okay, I'm going to speak to colleagues, networks that I've got. And I sent them, said, do we know any of these young men? Did we do? And they said, oh, they should be put into the police. And you know my position there. Yeah, okay, in inverted commas, the answer is yes. But on the ground, it's like, okay, do we know? Do any of our young men know these individuals? That's the first thing I did as a Muslim, because I thought, no, these individuals need to be caught, whether they're black, white, whatever complexion. Color didn't come into it. There was nothing inherent about color in it. And I speak credit to the brothers that I was speaking to. Many of them were South Asian as well, that I've known for many years. Color didn't come into it. There was no referencing or connotations of blackness or this, that, and the other, and who are they or whatever. So why does this happen, Abdurraheem? Why does it?
I don't know, right? It's interesting because it honestly, the funny thing is, bro, maybe I don't know if it's funny or not, but it didn't even cross my mind, right? Because I mean, it crossed my mind, but to be honest, I actually thought they may have been Asians. They may have been like, because there's some flipping horrific Muslim gangs, right? I mean, it doesn't make any difference. Like anyone brought up in London knows that you have white gangs, black gangs, Muslim gangs. Like you have gangs, like the crime and the violence is everywhere, right? It doesn't, the color of your skin has got absolutely nothing to do with it.
That's right.
So, I mean, from that perspective, the color issue is just, I think the problem is obviously, if it comes to and it's very interesting, funnily enough, because my daughter was doing a podcast with her best friend who's like Somali, and they were talking about this issue, and the issue came up is like, she was saying, the Somali girl was saying, I don't mind being called black because I am black. What does it matter to me? Like, and I think from the point of view of identifying, the culprits, right? I mean, if you want to catch them, I guess you got to identify some things about them, right? So that I don't think it's a problem as long as it's consistent. Right. This is the problem is really the inconsistency. This is the issue. And when there is inconsistency, with it comes injustice and with it comes prejudice. And you've quite rightly highlighted the fact that, the guy, when this guy killed those Asian ladies, right, that, the issue of his whiteness was not, I mean, obviously, there was a clear picture of him, but, why doesn't it say a white male did this, right? Why don't they just say it, right? And then listen, bro, there's just no doubt whatsoever. And we talked about this last week, and we just like, we've got to stop even pretending that there isn't some sort of institutionalized deep racism going on. There just clearly is, right? And it's a topic that's not going to go away. We're just going to have to keep hammering away and keep talking about it until we root this stuff out. And as Muslims, we've got to understand there is no place for it in our hearts and our minds. And every one of us should be like Abu Dhar, right? And put our faces on the ground and say, Bilal, I'm not going to move my face from the ground until you tread on it. Because this is how seriously we need to take this issue of tackling racism amongst us. It has to be taken seriously, and we have to deal with it. And it starts with every single one of you listening in on this program, right? And bro, I was on, I don't know if you've been on Clubhouse since.
Just that I've been asked to come on it. I'm hearing it's taking off, so I may be visiting
honestly
soon.
But anyway, so I was, after this talk that we did, I think, this one on imperial race theory, right, that we picked up here as well on a piece of cake. There was this sister, Denise, right? She's of Turkish origin. And she was talking about how when she was younger, she was approached by some black brothers for marriage, right? And she said she liked them, she didn't have an issue, right? But she approached her parents because she was nervous. She was thinking, what are my parents going to say, right? And they were like laughing, saying, we don't care. You can marry whoever you like. It doesn't bother us, right? But she was thinking, where did it come from? Where did the idea even come from that my parents might have a problem, right? And she said that in the end, she ended up marrying someone that looked like her. She ended up marrying some, Syrian brother and whatever, right? Okay, that was white. And then, when the whole of George Floyd thing kicked off, she went through some sort of mini crisis, right, in herself. And she was really, subhanAllah, I was really moved, yeah, because she said that I had to look deep inside myself and really say, when those guys came to me, right, asking for marriage, right, what was the real reason I said no? What was really going on inside me? Right. I like to think that I'm not racist. I like to think that I'm not prejudiced. But, when all of that stuff kicked off, I looked deep down inside and I wasn't so sure about it. I wasn't really so sure that there was not some prejudice going on. Right. And I thought, it's so good that there are people who are ready to dig down that deep within themselves and to examine something in the back in their life, which seems so innocent. But that's the sort of work we need to do, bro. That's the sort of internal work that we need to do to examine these sort of things, even if we think we're not racist, right? I do it all the time, partly because I know that I was racist in some sort of way. I don't like to think I was, but I know it was there. I know it was because of my upbringing, because of the whole way I was taught to think. I was institutionally racist. And if anyone understands anything about how the human brain works, you will understand that it never goes. It's always there, whatever it is, right? Like whatever bad habit you have, bro, it's ingrained in your head. Right?
As Sister Rabia said, Kira, something important. Some people aren't actually racist, but sometimes it's their circle and they're too shy to speak out. I do get that, and I think there are some who are passive in that instance. But what you're saying about
a product of the environment, bro. There's the
that
point.
Exactly.
That's the point. But the thing is, in terms of your actual internal programming in your brain, if you study how the brain works, right? Just to sum it down, it's basically whatever you're exposed to forms strong connections in your brain. And they think those connections never go. All you can do is override it with stronger habits and stronger thoughts, right? That's why you have to keep working hard. If you've had a bad habit, Abdul Haqq, bro, right? You probably find that I'm pretty sure everyone finds that sometime in their life when they're particularly like down or weak or whatever, you're just like really tired, that old habit resurfaces. Sometimes you think, where did that come from? I thought I dealt with that, right? And it just comes back up, right? So it is hard work, bro. It's the constant struggle, that constant jihad bil nafs,
right?
Against,
but and that's a really good point, Abdurraheem. But I want to flip it to the other side as well, as we're talking about this topic. And from my perspective, and there's many like me, okay, these things weren't an issue. They were initially, but we grew up and said, you know what? It's no issue because who we are and our self-identity and everything like this. If they're like that, let them stay there, because what we've got going and who we've got in our circles and everything like that, we're not really bothered, you know, because what you find as well, and I want to be very open on this, you'll find that many speak from the minority perspective, oh, the racism against blacks, anti-black racism, and we will speak about that because the reality, and the reason why we will speak about it as Muslims particularly, is that any Muslim who's holding that, you should be ashamed of yourselves. It's good that you're admitting, and you should be ashamed of yourself, because it shows, as you said regarding Abu Dhar, that you still got jahiliyyah in your heart. You've still got that ignorance in your heart. Whereas for us, for myself now, it's no thing, in the sense that that doesn't define our blackness. That doesn't define us societally. That doesn't define us as Muslims. And it's very easy for a number of us to say, do you know what? Let's go back insular, where our circle was predominantly black. Okay. Yeah. My alhamdulillah, I only knew black and white. My friends were black and they were white. That was my circle. Okay. The South Asian community didn't cross over whatsoever, weren't interested whatsoever. They didn't interest us in the slightest. They weren't part of our world, and we didn't want them to be, and we didn't want to be a part of those. I knew one Asian who was amongst my crew, my posse, if you like. And it's very easy. And I'm seeing black colleagues and other black communities, Muslim, moving back in that direction to say, we're not going to do this. We were raised in a Western society, be it America, be it the UK, and we're not going to try and fit in where we see we're not wanted, and we no longer want to fit in. We're moving our own circles. And then when that's done, there's accusations that proliferate against black people as well in that particular instance. And this is something that's happening, but there's also a detrimental side as well, because some are saying, look, this, ignorantly, I dare say, that this isn't a religion for black people. Look at what the Arabs have done. Look how the Asians are. White people, it's a comfort zone for them. They're looking at African, Pan-African faiths and everything like that, which is wrong in itself, Egyptology and everything like that. But in calling a spade, I'm saying straight up here to those, not you per se, but you are all the ones with the problem, not us. And when it comes to, and I know the litmus test is always marriage, and I've said it before, Abdurraheem, in another show, not with you here. We don't necessarily want to marry your women. Let's get that out of our heads. We don't want to marry your women, whether they're Asian or whatever. And like the Arabs say, oh, marrying a white woman is the epitome. You know, Abdurraheem, my background. You know our backgrounds. We used to date white women like we drink water. It wasn't an issue. So my thing is, let's put the record straight and call a spade spade. The black communities are not in any need or validation or sympathy from the other communities. But what we are saying is, check yourselves, because your racism, your prejudice, your inherent bias, especially when things like this happen, is your downfall, is your problem. It's not ours.
Yeah. I had a really interesting experience, bro, the other day, right? Again, this was on via Clubhouse, right? So I tuned into this Somali room, basically. It was a room of Somalis, right? And that basically this brother, right, was saying like Somalis should only marry Somalis. They had a special word for it, which I can't remember, Somali something, you know. It's like basically they're saying there's only 12 million Somalis in the world, right? We need to look after our own. Every other culture looks after their own, right? We need to protect our own, you know, we need to stop. But basically he was going down the line of, you know, I think a lot of the Somali sisters really didn't like what the guy was saying, because he was basically saying, you know, if you marry outside, you know, if you marry non-Somalis, you're sort of like implying that they're some sort of traitors and they should be stopped doing that, right? They did not like that at all, right? So anyway, bro, I went like probably my white, you know, you have to watch out for the white savior complex, right? So there I was listening. I was just fascinated. And in retrospect, I really realized that it probably wasn't appropriate for me to say something. But I just wanted to like inject some positivity, because there was a lot of negative vibes going on. So I just talked about my experience, some like really positive experience that I'd had with some Somali communities in Canada, right? Because like I always say, like, like I'm always saying to most people, like, look, you guys don't, none of you want to go back home. Everyone wants to leave Pakistan, right? Because most of my experiences with Pakistanis, right? Most of them want to flee Pakistan and come to the West, right? So my point is, build institutions here, right? Build your communities here. Stop dreaming about some life back home, because it ain't happening, right? So I was trying this out on the Somalis, thinking they'd be exactly the same, right? And like they were just looking at me blank. And I said, so yeah, so who wants to go back home anyway? And every single one of them put their hand up and said, yeah, I want to go back home, right?
SubhanAllah.
And it was like, what? Like, I just realized I just totally had not understood something here, right? And I was just saying, look, I know lots of powerful Somali women and this and that and whatever, and amazing things they've done. So, but they didn't take it well, bro. It was basically, and so what they said, right, was this. He said, oh, this brother's coming from the place of white convert privilege, right? And I'm sure he'd admit it. And so I was not happy with, I didn't say anything, I just left the room, right? But I was not happy. I'll be honest, I was not happy. And I'll tell you what, right? I thought, you know what? It's not okay for you to say that. It's actually not okay for you to say that, because you don't know me, you don't know my experience, yeah? And for you to presume that I'm white and therefore I'm privileged as a convert is complete rubbish, right? Because that's not my experience, right? My experience actually, as I was, and I vented somewhere else, right? I said,
And last
listen,
week, yeah,
here's my experience. My experience is I left the white community, right? I left my privilege behind when I became Muslim, right? And I joined a group of people who, many of them, treated me with contempt. They had a word of contempt for me, Gora, right? Which basically, they didn't even accept me really as a Muslim, right? And okay, things may have changed and dynamics definitely have changed, alhamdulillah, for different reasons. But that was not necessarily my experience. And the point is that my final point, the point is that I sort of really appreciated the first time what it's like for somebody else to be, thinking they have the right to talk about what your experience is, right? And to say, oh, the black experience this, or the white experience that, and I think it's important that, we need to be careful how we talk about other people. And we need to be careful about how we generalize about other people and their experiences, right? It's very important to do that.
No, absolutely. And I think it's good that you've said that.
I'm just saying that because you said something there. You slipped in something about white converts. And this.
No, I think what you said is important, though, and I think that needs to be heard, Abdurraheem, because that the white convert experience is seen as, oh, they're privileged because they're white, and so hearing what you're saying there, I think is very, very important. And also, I think that at the same time as well, some of the minorities, what happens is they then think that they can speak for us. Okay. They think that they have to, you just mentioned the Somalis, maybe the South Asians, and the stereotypes that are placed upon us in that particular instance. And we've got to ask ourselves, why is that happening? There's some brilliant comments coming up by a number, I can't keep up with them, but a number of comments that are coming up by Seamus, Rabia, and others as Badriya. Very important observations. But the thing is now, when you call a spade, when you speak straight, as we do on this show, it does put some noses out of joint, because it's speaking to cultural aspects that others may not have looked at, or they don't want to be spoken to about. And some may have even have confused, conflated what is culture with religion. So that call from the Somali that you just mentioned, saying that we should only marry Somalis. There are black people since before I was a Muslim, and since saying we should only marry black people. And we have to ask ourselves this question. We're not saying that there's anything inherently wrong or anti-Islamic regarding that, but we've got to say, what is the intention for saying that? Because we know that you can marry those who you have more resonance with, familiarity with, but we also have the evidence from the Prophet ﷺ. I know this is not about marriage, but about the criteria for marriage and everything. But the point of the matter is that when we start calling to it, and the platform is not religious, and you'll see very quickly that the platform is not religious because of what emanates from that. okay, it becomes ugly, it becomes disfigured,
Yes,
it becomes like what we see. Our brother has just died, our young brother has just died, and you've got, and we should be focusing on that, and we should be focusing on the culprits irrespective of their color. But then to start talking black, it says more, and that's not going to have individuals on board, because it's going to be detractors. Black Muslims say, well, hold on a minute, you know what, stay there with that. We don't like what's happened. We've come together as a result of faith around what's happened with this individual, but you're pushing back with black. So do you know what? Stay there with it yourself. We're moving back.
Yeah. I mean, again, like you said, bro, you were reading from that paper in the beginning, and it was like, why did you need to mention black every single time you mentioned the guys? Like, you can mention it once, all right? Okay,
that's right.
If you want to, right? But why every single time? Why do you have to reinforce it? What does it matter, right? The young men, right? That's it. You can say whatever, right? But
when you look at,
sorry, go on, bro. Go on.
What? So look at the sensitivity when we look at the grooming gangs. Okay, now the impression was given that they were disproportionately Asian, and we know that's not the case. But when that was being reported, the Asian community jumped up and was like, how can you say how?
Until now, I find brothers, they just can't deal with it, right? And I know there's certain people who are actually outspoken. Like one brother, we know him well, I don't want to mention, well, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't mind, Ilyas. I mean, I think he actually came out and said, yeah, there is a problem, right, in our community with this, right? And but it's not specific, right? The thing is, like, but it doesn't mean we can't deny, right, that we have a problem. And there is an issue with, young Muslim Asian men thinking that Gura girls are fair game because they're Gura, they're dirty, right? And they're kuffar, and what does it matter what we do with them, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure, by the way, there's white men who think the same things about Asian girls and black girls, or just maybe, I don't know, gypsy trash or whatever horrible thing that people come up with, right? People will justify their evil in their minds with all of these tropes, right? That's what people do. That's how they try to justify the evil they do, right? Oh, they're only Jews, that's why we're going to put them in concentration camps, right? Primitive, like what is happening in China now. Oh, those primitive Muslims with their barbaric religion, we're just going to reform them, right? Like, of course, when you do terrible things, you will try and rationalize it, right? By otherizing people. But for us to deny that is taking place, right? People have a real, like you said, bro, they have a real problem with it.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the sad thing.
But it's weaponized. But the problem is, I think that to be fair to the brothers, they'll say you're just giving our enemy weapons to beat us over the head with, right?
That's too easy. That's too easy to say that. That's the easy cop out when that's raised. But okay, what about when the shoe's on the other foot and they keep very quiet? Look, let's flip it now.
Sure,
when the Asian community were facing that, let's talk about the black community now. And we'll just go back to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Stephen Lawrence, and everything like that. And then what do we get? Not Stephen Lawrence. All lives matter. Diminishing our stance, diminishing our call. So this is the hypocrisy in that instance is what we need to address within ourselves. We really need to address it in ourselves. As one said, Mukhit said, identity politics it's just, we've gone backwards. Popularism, nationalism.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I'm so glad you raised that, bro, because this is. I'm interested in your thoughts on it, right? Because when I was going between and interestingly enough, I think it was the same week I went into an Afghani room, and they were going on about the same thing as Somalis were going on. They were going on about Afghanistan, right? And again, Afghanistan for Afghanis and this and that and whatever. Right. And I just thought to myself, honestly, this is really, honestly, my deeply held belief is that I just don't get why people are so attached to, their language and their culture. Right. I just don't get it, because really, honestly, the differences between us as human beings are so minuscule. At the end of the day, we all have to eat food, breathe air. We have to poo it out, right? Like that. Like, come on, seriously? Is there really seriously something to be so proud of because you're white or you're black or you're Afghani or you're? And the crazy thing is, bro, people get passionate they get mad and passionate and crazy about a flipping line that a white man drew on the map for them. So when people are going on about I'm Pakistani, I'm Afghani, I flip it and you know, you Gora, but yet you're getting crazy about a line that white men drew on the map and put you in that little box, and you're getting all crazy about it. How stupid is that? Like, you know, like how insane, right? I'm sorry, bro. You know, when it comes to nationalism and tribalism and racism and all these type of divisions, bro, it really actually genuinely makes me sick. It baffles me about how brainless and stupid and short-sighted people can be. That is, by the way, not to deny, right, people's experiences of oppression. I am not denying that at all, right? And I can understand that totally, because I'm not saying that doesn't exist. And I'm not saying, you know, like that we should ignore that in systemic racism. You know, I'm not saying that, bro. But ultimately, I think the cure has to come deep down inside from all of us, right? And we have to recognize we're all Bani Adam, right? We're just all made from mud, bro. We're all made from mud. We all came from a sperm and an egg, right? You know, we all started off, you know how we all started? The first part of our body to grow in our mother's womb. You know what it was, bro?
The coccyx.
Your backside,
backbone,
bro.
yeah.
Yeah, your backside. Right?
So I'm sorry, I'll be a bit cheeky. Some of the way some of us behave is like we're speaking from that, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
but
true,
no, what you're saying is absolutely right, and I think that I think Shabazz Ali and others is making correct statements in the sentiments that they're highlighting. We need to go back, because we keep talking, we give platitudes, so many platitudes about Islam is meant to be this and we're meant to be that and whatever. But then let's look again, like we spoke last week. We really need to look deep, like this sister you mentioned around the George Floyd thing. We really, really need to look deep. And if we look deep, we're going to see that there are inherent biases. We're seeing it societally, and a lot what we've got to check in ourselves as well is that a lot of this is coming from a post-colonial mindset. It's definitely coming from a post-colonial mindset, because okay, if we look at India and the caste structure, and some of it's emanating from there. So we need to question ourselves and say that, okay, when we are seeing tragedies, when we are seeing things against maybe our own ethnicities, why then do we look at the identity of the perpetrator immediately from the perspective of ethnicity? Why is that being done? And that is a problem in and of itself, that the ethnicity has to be looked at. And then if the victim happens to be someone that we are not, especially black or brown if we're white, then we have no issue. Then we don't have the similar empathy that's actually there. Let's look at and consider that's okay, Wayne Slum. Let's look at, we've got so many things on in the forefront at the moment. I've mentioned George Floyd, we've got the Uyghurs in China, we've got Kashmir. And I remember individuals coming and gunning, saying, speak about Kashmir, speak about Kashmir, speak about Kashmir. I was like, okay, I don't really know much about it, but I don't like whatever oppression is going on. But then where was your hue and cry and the clarion call for everywhere else? It's not there. What about what's happening in Tigray at the moment? Do any of you know where Tigray is? Have any of you been watching what's been happening?
It's in Ethiopia. And again, I was hearing that.
So what's going on in Tigray, and rape as a weapon, and things like raping women to cleanse the bloodline and things like this. Where is the clarion call there? But the reason we can't hear it is because it's on the African continent. The reason we can't hear it is because the complexion of those individuals are closer to mine. The reason why we can't hear it is because it's not from our ethnicities or anyone we can relate to.
Yeah.
This is from us. This is from us as Muslims. And we've got to ask ourselves.
But I guess, bro, look, to be fair, right? Because you as a black person, you are going to be concerned with black, you're going to be concerned with black issues. You constantly raise them, and quite rightly, you have the right to do.
No,
we wouldn't criticize
Abdurraheem, I stop you there. Why? Because yes, before I was Muslim, I went down that road. Okay, because I was saying I'm not dealing with anything else. When I came to Islam, and I saw what Islam stood for, and Abdurraheem, we went Bosnia. There are other calls we didn't even look at the color. We didn't, but the issue, what happened, the reason why the focus now, and you see me really put spotlights on our own causes, is because no one else was doing it.
Yeah.
No one else from the Muslim community was doing it.
I get what you're saying, bro. I apologize. Yeah, so I get what you're saying. I think your point being that is that why is there the discrepancy? And that needs to be pointed out. It's like, you personally, you know, for you, oppression is oppression. It doesn't matter where it is. But why are you behaving differently? Why do you treat me differently or us differently because we're black, right? And you don't make such a noise about the evil that's being perpetrated to us, right? But I think we know the answer to that, bro. It comes back to this whole tribalism. It comes back to, you know, people are always going to be, you know, like most people are going to be mostly concerned about what's happening to, you know, their immediate friends, their immediate family. Most people, unfortunately, don't think about the wider family of humanity, right? Even the brotherhood, bro, even the Brotherhood of Islam, right?
No, you're right. But can I ask you a question?
It's very important. Yeah, you can. One little thing I'm going to say. Everybody needs to understand that this is just a plot of the Shaitan and his followers, right?
Absolutely.
They want to divide us into nations. They want to divide us into ethnicities. They want to divide us like this and make it. It's actually a source of blessing. Allah made us into tribes and nations to know each other.
Right.
This beautiful blessing that Allah has given, Shaitan has turned it into a means of enmity. This is how we have been deceived and fooled by Shaitan. Anyway, sorry, yeah, go on, bro.
No, but thank you for that. Jazakallah khair, and I agree 100% with you. But let me ask you this, Abdurraheem. All of the Muslims who have got these cultural accreditations, should we say, if they look truly at the history of Islam and those around the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they saw a significant number, not minority, a significant number of them looked like me, were black. Prophet Sallallahu wife after Khadija was black. His milk mother, his nursing mother was black. The Sahaba who conquered Egypt and the army that went forward were black. Let me ask everyone now.
They were actually Muslim.
Yeah, so let me ask now. Muslims, are we now doubting our faith that the forefathers in the illustrious period of Islam, the Sahaba and the companions after them, and the Tabi'in and Atba Tabi'in, were Atab ibn Rabah was black. Musa alayhi salam was black. A number of prophets, Anbiya, were black. Does it make you feel a bit worried now that you're hearing the ethnicity and the complexions of the Sahaba and the Anbiya were of this complexion? And if you didn't know that and you're learning that now, how does that make you feel with how you are in the context of society today? How does that make you feel? Because it's something you need to deal with. I've paused there. I have to.
That's it, bro. Like, what are you going to say after that? It's like that pregnant silence, they call it, isn't it, bro? That like, whoa, yeah. No, it's so true, bro. What can we say? What can you add to that, bro? Jazakallah khair. Maybe we should, that's just, you know, the place to wind it all up, bro, because it's powerful. We need to keep talking about this. I don't think, you know, you think, oh, not another show on racism. Why not? Has it left us? Has it gone? Has the disease of nationalism and tribalism and racism, has it gone? No, it hasn't. It's still, it's getting worse. It is getting worse. And we, you know, everybody listening, we need to take it seriously and do something about it, right? And, you know, we need to reclaim that beautiful, you know, what Islam was famous for, bro. Like, even non-Muslims wrote about how Islam had dealt with this issue of racism, how effectively, how it dealt with the issue. And but it comes from effort. It's not just some magical thing. It's not like, oh, there's no racism in Islam. And no, in Islam there isn't. It doesn't mean that Muslims don't have it.
That's
we keep mentioning Abu Dhar, right? He was a companion. He had to deal with it. He had to fight it, right? He had to physically, you know, take steps to combat his prejudice and his nafs. That's Abu Dhar. Don't think that you don't have to work a lot harder than him. A lot harder. You're going to have to work. All of us. May Allah help us.
We need to lead on this, Abdurraheem, as Muslims. This is why you and I came to Islam. I think if we saw that, actually, you're going to be treated with racism worse than you did in society. Okay, not yourself, but myself in that instance. Okay, would we have come? Yes, it's the truth. But maybe I would have gravitated and found other communities where I actually saw Islam being practiced. Brixton Mosque emanated, it grew as a result of the elders being rejected elsewhere and saying we've got to have our own mosque. And Maj is asking a good question. What we really need to do, Maj Erez, is we need to look deep. And you know what? When we look in the mirror and we ask ourselves questions, if you've got children, like I would say now, my daughters, do I have any issue with them marrying any other race or anything? No. It got to a point where I did question. I was saying, I don't want my children to marry into the Pakistani culture. Even though I've got half Pakistani daughters in that instance, because I felt there's going to be rejection. But no, I don't mind. That's a litmus test for all of us. And I know, mashallah, Abdurraheem, for yourself, how you are in that regard as well. So, Maja, we need to look, as we draw to a conclusion, we need to look deep, as that sister that Abdurraheem referred to did, and realize that there's some things inherent in us. And it's okay to see me and to see black Muslims filling particular stereotypes and saying, I like Drake if you listen to music, and I like, because they're in an entertainment capacity or whatever. But the moment they come close or into your space or into your circle, that you start realizing then that actually I only see them as a product. I only see them as an object. I only see them as an other. That's when you know you've got a problem within yourself. And if it's not from you and you've got family around you that hold that, you've got to speak out about it without breaking ties with your family, but you've got to park it where it
Call
is.
It out.
This is racism. Okay, whether it's against white Muslims, converts, black Muslims, or whoever it may be. And if you're black Muslims and you've got a race prejudice or racism against ethnic racism against brown or white or whatever, you need to call it out as well. The point of the matter is you've got to look.
Add to this, bro, misogyny as well, because I think,
like,
despite everything, I think this is really valid. You know, I've been like the latest thing. Maybe we should be talking about this next week, right? It's
definitely
a good topic, right? Because some of the things that I was watching this YouTube video of this Korean lady in Germany. I even thinking about it makes me feel tearful, right? The stuff she experienced, the abuse she experienced, right? And the way that men felt they could come up, kiss her, touch her, like, and not just white guys. Like the first guy in the video was also like Asian, right? And like, who feels they have the right to invade someone's alhamdulillah for Islam? Well, alhamdulillah, in Islam, that you're not even supposed to touch a person. And the funny thing is, all they say, all that stuff about segregation, and all the things, like, subhanallah, you see the wisdom of Islam, right? You can see but anyway, it doesn't matter. Even if a woman is walking stark naked down the street, it doesn't give you an invitation to flipping go and touch her and, like, do anything to her except what she feels comfortable with, right?
We need to talk. We need to dedicate a time to this. A whole subject to misogyny, because it is something that is rife in society and in the communities as well. And also, let's bring it down. Let's call the spade a spade. Let's bring it down to an ethnic issue where women or particular ethnicities are fetishized. So you've got that happening with black women. You've got that happening with Asian women in that instance. As you mentioned earlier, white women. But you've got white women being cheapened and denigrated by Asians, having these perceptions. And you know what? Yeah. That needs to be smashed out of the water, because no woman, as you said, no. And last week I was attacked by a brother, and I kind of went out against him, and he clarified what he said, and I had to withdraw it back and apologize to him, because I felt he said, why do you always speak up for women's causes and everything like that? And I said, because they need to be spoken up for, and there's women who can speak up for themselves, but there's got to be men saying misogyny isn't it, and Islam and misogyny don't go hand in hand. Sorry, they just don't. Now, patriarchy is a totally different subject, but misogyny doesn't. But when you're talking misogyny with racism tinged with it, that's got to be the most disfigured and ugly manifestation of a human being that exists.
Isn't it?
It's
double
whammy
of oppression.
Yeah, and it's an ugly manifestation, very, very ugly manifestation. So I think what we need to do, Abdurraheem, I know you've got to pray Maghrib. What I would say is next week we should possibly look at misogyny, but here now, what we've got to be careful on, when tragedy strikes, we've got to make sure that we don't look for the identity beyond identifying who the culprit is and not his or her color in order to start castigating and generalizing about an ethnicity, which has been done so many times.
And that's the test, bro. That is the, you know, like you said, marriage is the litmus test. This is also the litmus test, right? The litmus test is also, you know, like, that's, I guess, you know, like, you know, when someone does something to you, right? And you see, like, so someone mugged me, right? And the person happens to be black, right? That's the test. Am I going to say you N-word or you whatever, right? Am I going to bring his color into it? If some Pakistani does something, am I going to say you know, whatever, right? Am I going to do that? Because that really, you see, it's under those stress situations, right? That's when it really comes out, isn't it? It's really what comes out, what's deep down inside, right? So that's what we're talking about. Digging deep, guys. Dig deep.
And as we leave this show, one of the things that we got to really work out, and I'm saying this about brothers and sisters as well.
Yeah.
Any victim, especially a sister. We saw the murder recently, last week, that we were talking about on Clapham Common. What we've got to look at, we've got to stop that statement, and we've got to wash it out of our mouths. She was asking for it.
Oh my God. No one's like
that disgusting statement. Yeah, Muslims say it as well. Muslims say it as well. A woman may be drunk. A sister may not be wearing hijab properly. A sister may be, what we've seen as well is when we see pretty women, but Abdurraheem, the one thing, when we see pretty women that may have rejected us, okay, this is a man thing, not every man, alhamdulillah, but then the next thing, I'm not even going to say the words, but basically insulting epithets are given to that woman, especially if she's a woman of color or she's a white woman or whatever. And as you said, so with the white women from the South Asian community, not all, she's a slag, she's easy, she's this, she's that, because she may have shown a liking to that particular individual. Did you think, and I've seen this, Abdurraheem, I'll be frank, when women, non-Muslim women, see Muslim men, they see initially people of virtue or who come from a traditional or safe background, and that's attractive to a lot of women. That's attractive to a lot of women. But then if you've got these individuals masquerading with beards and being religious and everything, and they're everything and anything but, and they're looking at these women as objects on account of their race, and they say she's looking for it, she wanted it, she wanted what? What did she want? What you're giving?
Well, I tell you what,
you know what, Abdurraheem? Those individuals, I'd love for those men to come onto this show, but you know what they want? They're cowards. They're speaking in lurking corners and throw abuse from far and everything. I'd love to sit down with them and say, you know what, bring it. And we'll show you a thing or two in the discussion about how insecure, how weak, how pathetic you are to be able to think like that. And then when you say to them, straight one question. So if we look at your mother or your sister like that, what do you have to say about that? Oh, then they start getting aggressive. Then the defensiveness comes out over their mother and their sister and everything like that. These double standards need to be broken. And so, Abdurraheem, we'll conclude on that. I'll leave the last word with you, but we need to move into that direction.
That's absolutely fine, bro. That's absolutely fine. Let's save it for next time, inshallah. I've got stuff to say, but it's nothing much to add to what you said. I think it's a great topic for next week. Hopefully everyone can look forward to tuning into it. It's been a real pleasure being here with Dr. Abdul Haqq Baker, who's over there.
And a pleasure being with that brother over there, who I love very much for Allah, Abdurraheem Green.
And this has been a
piece of cake. See you next week, everyone. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.